Hey folks, in this video I'm going to show you how to configure a Google Maps API key in MetaLocator. The first thing we're going to do in MetaLocator is we're going to make a new interface, and I just want to point out some settings in terms of what settings impact Google Maps API and where you store your API key. Under Map Settings, you will see a Map Vendor option. This is what enables the different map vendors, one of which is Google Maps. I want to be clear that using Google Maps is not required in MetaLocator, and so you can use the built-in MapTiler GL, or you can use Google Maps. If you use Google Maps, you have to give us an API key, and you might receive charges from Google Maps depending on the amount of utilization that goes through the locator. So now that we've got Google Maps enabled, down here under More Map Features, we see this option for Google API key. This piece we actually need to get from Google, and to do that, I'm going to go into my Google account under console.cloud.google.com. If you have an enterprise contract with Google, or you already have a console account, you may come in here and you may see a bunch of other projects, things unrelated to MetaLocator. Typically what I'll do is go ahead and make a new project. So I can just, under the sample project dropdown, I can go ahead and click New Project. And so I'll do that. And it'll ask me to give it a name, and if I have an organization or an enterprise account, I can specify that here. And so I'll just click Create. And the system will go through and create my project. And now I have a project with a name that I can work on. And make sure that you actually select the project that you just created. So just off screen, I'm going to go ahead and select that project. So now I'm working in that project, and the first thing I need to do is actually give it an API key. And so let's go under APIs and Services, and we will choose Credentials. And so under Credentials, you can see that there's nothing listed here, but what we need to do is actually create an API key. So let's go ahead and click Create Credentials and then API key. It will go ahead and make an API key for me, and I can copy this API key, and I'm just going to put that in the clipboard for now and click Close. Notice there are warnings here about it that this key is unrestricted. We'll fix that in just a minute. But this API key right now doesn't actually give us access to anything. We need to tell Google which APIs this key will unlock. So let's go over to Enabled APIs and Services, and we want to enable some APIs and services for this key. And so what we want to do is actually enable the Maps JavaScript API. You can search for it, but you can also click Enable. And that enables the mapping system. The other thing that we need to enable, though, is the Places API. The Places API gives us access to autocomplete. So when MetaLocator starts, when you type in the location search bar, and the system wants to fill in suggestions for that search, that actually leverages Google's Places API. So down here I see the Places API, and I'm going to go ahead and click that and click Enable. And so now we have the Maps for JavaScript enabled, and we have the Places API enabled for this API key. The next thing we want to do is limit the exposure of this API key. It's actually much more common these days when you have unrestricted API keys for those to get grabbed because they're in the code of the page, and have people use them for their own purposes. And so this will prevent that and allow you to restrict use of the API key to just MetaLocator. And so under API backend credentials, under those key restrictions, what we want to do is add a series of allowed HTTP refers. And so we're going to go ahead and click Add, and we're going to go and add star.metalocator.com, and that should do it. I think /star would even be more specific. So that will limit the key's ability to be used on other websites. The other thing that we can further do is restrict the APIs that this particular key can call, so that we've given access to the project to specific APIs, but now we can filter this particular key down to the Maps JavaScript API, and then also the Places API. And so now not only the project, but also the key is also restricted to those two selected APIs. Sorry, I'm a little bit off screen. I'm just going to move this up. And so now you can see that we have the Places API filtered, and then we also have the JavaScript API filtered. Now that we have the API key properly restricted and limited to the APIs that it can access, we can go ahead and hit save. And now we have a properly credentialed API key. Those are the steps required to create the API key, restrict the project to both Maps for JavaScript API, and then also the Google Places API. I'm going to go back in and copy the key, and then I can go back to the Google API key setting in MetaLocator and provide that key, and now it's safely provided. And so now when I type in, for example, like Milwaukee, I can see that we have an appropriately provisioned API key, and Google Maps is displaying as expected. That concludes our tutorial on how to create an API key, how to provision it correctly, and how to add it to MetaLocator. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our support team. Thanks.